welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a little while, but been busy taking care of some loose ends. I got a new computer, and now that necessitates a new editing program because the one that was on there previous just won't work anymore. So I've upgraded and I'm trying out the DaVinci Resolve 20. I got the free version, so we'll see how that goes. Made one short video already and posted it. There's a lot to it. It's got a lot more features. It's harder to use right now for me, so this is what I'm going with. So let's get on with the show here. I'm back on the Pontiac again, and want to get this thing moving, blah blah blah, so I can get the truck in and get the frame fixed on that. So let's move forward and do that. Along with like getting the brakes working and all this and that, I also have another small item I'd like to get changed out before I start moving the car around, and that's I got a better and slightly deeper cast aluminum transmission pan for the transmission. And because the stamped steel one, after many years of being on the car, is just leaking, and no amount of tightening or whatever is just making it work anymore. So I splurged for a Lokar billet transmission dipstick. These aren't cheap, especially the full race model, which is over $200. This one was a little bit less. I'll say first off that the packaging's good, really good. It's in a plastic bag, and then they got a semi-disposable cloth protective here for it. So let's get it out of the bag and see what it looks like. This is what you use to fill your transmission up with. Show you how that goes on there in a second. Yeah. So here it is. Really nice. It's got braided steel, rubber hose, and billet aluminum fittings on each end, and a billet aluminum double O-ring seal dipstick, which is nice chrome mounting tab, right? And on this end, it's got this push-in seal, and so the idea is that you snake this down to your transmission, and using brute force shove this in the the hole where the dipstick orifice is, right? And that's supposed to be sealed up and not gonna leak and all that. And it says 100% guarantee, and I'm confident that it probably would not leak, but with the higher end race model, this is designed differently. This area is a little longer, it's threaded, and there is a sort of nut affair on this end. And so what you do is you put this in the hole. There's of course an O-ring or a similar seal like this on that one model as well, and you take a socket or a wrench and turn this, and it draws it down in, and it's super sealed, all that stuff, real good. And with that one too, this part right here, you can push and click and disconnect it if you're a racer that has to take his transmission out when he gets back to the shop because it's slipping or whatever else is going on. You can just undo the hose part, and a plug comes with it. You can stick that back in, and there you go. You don't gotta like undo the hose off of the firewall and snake it down through the engine compartment if all you're doing is taking out the transmission, all that kind of stuff, which I'm not going to be doing because this ain't going to be a dedicated race car. So I opted out of the over $200 model for this one. And once again, I have to modify something because I just don't 100% trust this method. So here's what I'm going to attempt to do. Oh, and by the way, you take this out, right? And this is like mounted on your firewall, right? Like so. And then you use this device and that goes in there like that. And then you can stick a funnel in that rubber hose, and there you go. Add transmission fluid. So there you go. Alright, over to the bench. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and my first thought was, because this unscrews, because to hold the hose in and all that stuff, I was thinking of taking off this rubber sealed affair here, and this is going to expose the whole length of this, and cutting threads into this, and then fabricating a sleeve piece, that'll like screw on like the $200 one, and that will like go from the inside. You can just bolt that, and then have, and screw that in, and tighten this down, and then have part of this back on with this part right here, or a big fat O-ring to seal it as I drew it in. But I just don't have the tooling and the know-how to do that, so I had to think of a different way, and I think I got it. So what I'm going to do is, and when you do this, you need a 1-inch wrench or a pie crescent wrench at work, and this unscrews. Alright, so I already got this loosened up. Okay, and we'll set this big part aside. So I am going to attempt, and I hope I don't screw this up, because if I do, I might be up shit creek. So I'm going to thread the interior of this, and then I got some aluminum stock here. This is some like T6064 aircraft aluminum. It's pretty tough stuff. And this is going to be part of what I use to attach. And what I'm going to have to do is, first I'll thread this. I got a tap and die matching set here for this. And then take this and tap the threads on for this. And then this will screw into here, and then I'll solder or braze a round flange on this end that is length specific, so that when I put this down into the transmission, right, I'll have this threading into this, and then the flange it'll come up and push up against the casting on the inside, and that'll draw this in and tighten it just like on the expensive one. That's the plan anyway. And of course I'll have to bore a hole through this in order for this to follow through for the dipstick. So let's get to that. Okay, so it took me a couple of tries. This part was relatively easy. I guess it was convenient for me to have a lathe to set this in and start the tap in perfectly straight. I suppose you can do the same thing with the drill press, right? I didn't think about that till later on, but this was the harder one right here, getting the die started straight on this thing. So that took a couple of tries, but we got, or at least I got what I'm wanting here to start off anyway. Right, And by the way, if you buy one of these things, this opening is 21/64, and since I'm not a mechanic and a machinist, I did a Google question and it told me that a 3/8 by 24-inch thread, where's it at? Probably ain't gonna show up in the camera, it's just too fine print. But anyway, so I happen to have right in my set a tap and a die for 3/8 24. So that's how I made this and this. I happen to have, just by chance, the right diameter of aluminum rod laying around from who knows what years ago, and I was able to make the beginnings of this modification. So the next thing I got to do is bore a hole through this so that the dipstick can go through it, right? So we'll get to that. Okay, so now I got the hole bored all the way through the piece, and so yeah, so the dipstick goes all the way through it like so. Okay. Okay, so I need to know how far this is going to go, right? So when this sets down in there, and this tops out on the top of the case, I want to know like how far this sticks down as opposed to like this right here. So I'm like, screw this in, you know, getting ahead of myself here. So I got the rubber gasket off, not that big a deal, you know, just got to work at it a little bit and it'll come off, so I can find out how far this has to screw in to bottom this thing out. So now I got to get underneath the car and put this in and figure that part out so I can visually see how this is going to work. I'd like to take you underneath there with me, but there's just no way to like hold the camera and have it light. I mean, I'll try, I'll give it a shot, but if it just don't work out, it don't work out. So let's go give this thing a try. So there it is. I dropped it in the dipstick port, and that's what it's going to look like when it's all tightened down. And I need to get this screwed in so I can measure for my hold down nut. I don't know if you can even see the end of it anywhere. So it goes in here, and so you can see sort of like that inside flat part that's around all that, right around here. Now I'm gonna try and make, I'm not gonna try, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna mill a nut that screws on the end of that. There it is. So you can see like right up there that little flat part that's cast into the transmission, and there ain't shit on this end over here to work with. This is going to be a real tight piece. As you saw, and obviously I did too, when this goes in, this bottom part's going to stick out about, I'm going to call an 1/8 of an inch. So now, but I still have to mill. So I have to mill a piece that'll fit over this and go up against that sleeve, and then I'll have to get underneath there and try and measure that too. It's either that or go trial by fit and mill it down every time or something. I don't know. I'll get to that part. Okay, I found a piece of material to do this with. So let's get busy and face this thing off. Next, I need to drill a hole 25/64. Now let's see if this fits. There we go. Okay. Now the end of this, that's going to go from the end of this, it's going to be facing up into the transmission case. Can be around like 3/4 of an inch in diameter to go up against that facing we saw. So I gotta mill that down, mill this down to 3/4 of an inch. So the part that's gonna buck up against the transmission case and tighten this down in is gonna be 3/4 of an inch, maybe a shade more in diameter, and part of it's got to fit over this as it goes in, and so this is about, so I'm gonna have like an 1/8 of an inch wall of this thing going all the way around. So this end of it, this hole right here is going to have to be enlarged to 5/8 of an inch so it can encapsulate or surround or go into the 1/8 or however much of it's going to like surround into once this all starts to go in and pull this thing together. I know it's kind of hard to vision out what I'm talking about, but once I get it done, you'll see. Hopefully I'm going to be able to do this. It's going to work, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So now I'm going to mill half of this down, or 2/3 of it down to 3/4 of an inch, because that's the part that's going to be holding it in. So now this fits in here as if this part of it was being screwed in this way, and this is getting pulled down in to the transmission dipstick orifice, and it only got to go in so far because this is the rubber seal that they give you to put on here, and it's going to overshoot it by 1/16 of an inch anyway and compress it as it goes in. So I'm hoping I got that calculation down. So moving on, I think I definitely got to mill this down. This is like way too big. Okay, we're almost to the testing phase. So this is the part I milled out. Here's the cup, and it's going to fit over as this thing comes down into the transmission case. And this goes through here, and this is going to be the part that actually draws it down, right? So I measured out half the threads, which is 24 millimeters. So I went to 12 with that little, there's a mark here. All right, something like that. And this goes on here like this. And now I gotta attach this to this, so that when I turn this and screw this in, this is gonna draw this in now. So I had to ditch everything I just made because this part right here is too skinny. It went right through the hole of where the dipstick goes into, you know, to mount this thing. And this right here was meant to like buck up against the inside of the case, while this part, you know, pulled it down and sealed up the seal. Well, that didn't work. That wasn't going to work because this is too skinny. It went right through. So I made a whole new thing. So I have this right here. It's ready to go in. The orifice that the dipstick goes into is right next to where a curve is for the pan and gasket. So it's not even completely round in there. It's round, and then there's like 10% of it that's taken up by the casting for the curvature of the pan. So if you make one of these things, you gotta like sand or grind off one end of it so it fits into that flat, right? And when I get this all together, I'll get underneath there and you know, shoot a video of it so you can see what I mean. So now I made all new stuff. This is gonna go up in, and then this is the new one I made. Made one out of steel because I don't have the right solder and I don't have an aluminum welder to fasten a nut on the end like I needed to use it as a device to screw up and pull this thing all together. I'm going to get underneath there and put this thing together and hope it works. Okay, so I just came out from underneath the car. It broke, but it's something that's repairable. I had this up here, everything was going good, and I had this brazed on the end. I'm turning it with a wrench, like just a half a turn at a time, and I went to go turn it again, and it just broke off the end there. So I got to make another one, and maybe I'll make a better one, right? Okay, I think I may have been able to save this. This is the original one I made, and I couldn't at the time figure out how I'm gonna tighten this thing up and all that. So I just put a few threads on the end of it here. I got a nut the same. See, I got the nut on there, the old one, or the original part. I'm gonna run this up there and see if it'll work. Okay, so it was working, but I ran out of threads. Even with that nut on there, it wasn't enough. So I'm going to take the old part that I started out with and cut a spacer out of this. And that'll give me the draw I need to get that sucked down into the hole, and that should do it. Also, when I was going to take this out, I go to unscrew it, or unscrew it out of the fitting, and the nut come off the end. So I cut some more threads in it and a slot, right? And I splayed those out a little bit, and this is really tight on here now, more tight than it'll ever be to hold that tube in. So if something happens again, I'll be able to get it back out. So I got it in. You can see how close the fit is. I had to put the one piece back in the lathe and shave down the flange on the nut I used on the end of that there, just because you can see when I was tightening up it was going to hit that nut there on that part of the valve body. So yeah, I mean, it's probably longer than it needs to be, but doing it this way, it's just past all of this valve body stuff and everything, so that, you know, when you go to, if you ever have to take this thing out, there's that nut right on the end of the shaft that's screwed into this fitting right here. And I can't, I'm trying to zoom in so I can see a little better. And you can see the little rubber, that rubber thing that was on there on the fitting, you know, that was supposed to be the pressure fit just to stick in this thing, and I just didn't agree with that. So I fabricated this thing up, and so now it's working pretty good. I got it tightened down to about 10 foot-pounds, which I think is more than enough, because this isn't going to be underneath any kind of pressure. It's just holding the dipstick fitting in. Before I go and end this completely, I want to show you what I used here. Now this is aluminum rod. It's probably T6065, some kind of, I don't even know what the grade of this is, but it's pretty strong stuff, so it's probably some aircraft grade aluminum rod that I ordered for something at some point. And this is 3/8 of an inch diameter, which was absolutely perfect for what I needed, right? And I used this tap and die set, which is 3/8 by 24 inch, 3/8 by 24 thread pitch, and I use a tap 3/8 by 24 for the orifice of the dipstick fitting that went down into the transmission. So I threaded this on the end of this and threaded this, used this to cut threads on the inside of that fitting, and just screwed up into that. And then I cut that to length right, made the spacers, and used this on the end to cut some threads, you know, however long I had that right, and used that's a 3/8 by 16. You can use the same one if you want, if you got whatever you're going to use as a tightening device, a nut on the end there to do this. So there you go. That's the tooling I used. And unfortunately, I don't know if you can do this without a lathe or not. I find it incredibly difficult to do so. So there you go. So there it is. Finally got it in. This video has been shot over a period of about 3 weeks at least. It's been difficult to find time to work on the car, but at least I got this part of it done. All left to do now is to, you know, put the transmission pan on, which is, you know, something I'm not going to cover because it's super boring, whatever. I'm hoping my video you just got done watching isn't super boring either, and hope you learned something out of it. And if you get one of these Lokar things that you spend $160 or $150 on the one I bought, instead of $200 or more on something you might not need. So please like and subscribe, and sometimes I post on Facebook, you know, a link too. So thanks for watching the video, and have a good day.